Timing myself. Hi. Very nice. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. Because by the end of the reading, you'll turn on me. Oh, you're laughing at. So, I need to explain a little bit about the process here. About 3 years ago, I wrote a book-length memoir. I gave it to my agent, and she said, "I like the writing, but I hate the protagonist." It was a setback. So I ended up doing a thing where I would, in the morning and the afternoon, write something brand new that was memoir, and then I would bring it that night to an open reading or group reading or something like that, just to gauge audience reaction and sense when things were going well and when they were going like the first draft had. So I ended up kind of getting a good running start that way. So back in December, when this reading was scheduled, I had the very end of my memoir to read. It was the last couple of pages, and I was going to do that awkward thing of like reading from the end of your book. And I say, well, to set this up, there's 260 pages of heartbreak, and when the king spills his chili, it means something entirely different. I'll never explain it. But anyway, instead, there was weather, and so that didn't happen. So instead of actually getting to read it, I sent it off to my publisher instead, who bought the book. So, it's good, but you guys didn't help. Not at all. I'm very disappointed in you. But the good thing was, and the weird thing was, that the publisher liked the book and then also said, great, write 2 more volumes. So I now have for you the beginning of the second volume that I want to read. That'll take about 8 minutes. The scary thing is, to set this up, you don't need to know anything, which means the entire first book was throat clearing. So this is the beginning of volume 2, which I think is going to be called More Fun. Before I tell you who I became, I should tell you about the person I no longer wanted to be. Between my freshman and sophomore years of college, I worked at a pizza parlor in Santa Monica, California. I was in college back east, which made Dwayne, the assistant manager who hired me, a little suspicious. I was going to Wesleyan, which I had expected would impress him, for it had impressed my parents' friends. But he concluded that this meant as an intellectual or something, I wasn't actually qualified to use the oven. So I made the pizzas and put the metal tags on them with the order numbers, and they were shuffleboarded into the burners by Marion, a surf rat with a dirty pelt of blonde hair, and the Santa Monica native's accent, that afternoon-length R that made him sound like he was from Missouri. But when Dwayne's back was turned, Marion let me put a pizza in once. 2 seconds later, I recoiled with a burn from the oven's lip already rising on my wrist. "Oh, don't worry," Marion whispered. He showed off his forearms. They were shiny with welts. "You get used to it." "Wow, that looks painful, man." "Oh, no, man. I take a Quaalude every morning before work. I don't feel a thing." There was a whole question of cause and effect there, but I left it alone. This was the first job I'd had where my coworkers understood they'd maxed out their earning capacity. This was also the first job where most of them smoked pot out in the back alley, which made them friendly, or at least resigned in the face of adulthood's promise of approaching ruin. There was a sense of fatalism in the air, as if everyone had swum from a sinking ship onto the island that was Shakey's Pizza. Supplies were running low, there was no rescue plane coming, and making pizzas and doing bong hits were only going to last so long before we finally ate each other. I don't remember talking much. The others all had nicknames, Hoss, Dutch, and Tango, but I didn't get a nickname. Whenever I added something to the conversation, the others fell silent, as if they were trying to interpret how I was secretly judging them. The fact was, I just wanted to fit in. And the baldness of this, too, probably made them fall silent. After I'd been there 2 weeks, Dwayne pulled me aside. He whispered to me, eyes ducking left and right as if looking for eavesdroppers. "Wesleyan, my cousin just told me about that place. Wow." I brightened. "Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. How'd you end up at an old girls' school anyway?" He had such respect for me, and by extension for himself, for having known to hire me in spite of everything else I presented. I could see in his eyes, he just knew I had stories of disdainful girls in English equitation outfits and tough kilted lacrosse players and pledges in pink sweaters lining up, nails dug into palms with anticipation, outside a sorority house in whose chapter room, by candlelight on a mound of silk underpants, I was the altar. "That's Wellesley," I said. "I go to Wesleyan." Oh. And just like that, I was demoted. I remember him walking away and me thinking, why am I that kind of person? And wishing I'd just kept my mouth shut. How hard would that have been? The world would have been mysterious, bold, and a better place for both of us. Wesleyan, where I was returning to in the fall, was humorless. The term politically correct was rumored to have started there. And in 1982, it was the front burner on which all other discourse carbonized. One debate in the student newspaper was whether you could be a feminist and not be a lesbian. The answer came down like a double-headed axe. No. No, you couldn't. The feminist house changed its name to the womanist house, W-O-M-O-N-I-S-T. And there was a women's history class for men called Educating the Oppressors. And men took it. And just as political jokes flourished in the Soviet Union during the Khrushchev era, Wesleyan turned out to have a hidden, spectacular sexual humor. Question: why do women have vaginas? Answer: so men will talk to them. Turning just a little right here. That was my second favorite joke. My favorite was courtesy of a very mean-looking junior named Dan Cloud, who took the villainous roles in the theater department. One evening, as I was about to go on stage in a play, Dan pulled me aside. I was in costume, so was he, bowler hats, torn jacket, some sort of Beckett pastiche. Dan had never actually spoken to me before. I thought he had some kind of emergency stage direction for me. He whispered, "How do you make a woman come?" "How? Who cares?" He shoved me through the curtain and onto the stage, dazzled. It's an old trick to fuck with your classmates, and I was impressed, but I didn't break character, and I managed my lines, and from then on I had a new favorite joke. At Shakey's Pizza, orders started with number 1 and went to 100 before going back to 1 again. When a pizza came out of the oven, any of the crew could go to the microphone and call it out. It was simple enough that Dwayne let me do it, except for one number. Every night, when it came up late in the rotation, there was a shoving match among 4 or 5 guys to grab the order in the microphone, and the winner would cry, "Calling number 69!" No one ever got tired of it. Whoever won was looked upon as heroically as Alexander Pope pinning Dorothy Parker to a chaise longue, although I was probably the only one there who thought that. I never competed. I just quietly made my pizzas and bided my time because I knew I could do better. It was early August when I piped up, which meant there was still a month left for me to live with the consequences of trying to tell my joke. It also meant I'd been there long enough to understand my actual place, which I'd been paying attention, if I'd been paying attention, which I hadn't. It wasn't that I was shunned, it was the opposite of that. My job was to be the guy in college. They saw me as on a train that wasn't really stopping at their particular station, only pausing so its passengers could cock their heads at the local sights. If I were to participate, it would have been terrible for my coworkers. Had Dwayne or one of the others been forced to explain it, it would have sounded like, at least let us have this moment before the rest of our lives come along and mow us down. There were 5 or 6 of us in the kitchen, and though it was early in the shift, it was busy, so the calling of number 69 had already occurred. My coworkers were in a post-coital drowsiness because of that. There was some attempt at joke-telling. I was listening, nervous, waiting to make my move, and then I felt it was time to speak. So, how do you make a woman come? There was a long silence. I looked around. Marion was looking at the ceiling. Dwayne was clenching his brow. Finally, Dwayne said, "You play with the clit, right?" "No," I said, "who cares?" Silence. Had there been crickets in the kitchen, we would have heard crickets. Marion said, "I care, man." No, I said, "it's a joke." "Tell it again," Dwayne said. "I can't tell it again." "Sure you can, tell it again." It's like trying to chew the same stick of gum twice. But, okay, how do you make a woman come? As if enthusiasm would make it work, I shrieked it. But Dwayne was holding up his hand. Wait. "Hey, Tango, Dutch, come in here. Glen's telling a joke." "Glen, wait, hold on, Glen. Wait for Tango and Dutch." Skip it. I looked down at my prep table, the cold slices of pepperoni and mushroom and green pepper. In other words, the actual tools of my actual job. We don't have to, but Tango and Dutch were there, arms folded, waiting for me to speak. What's going on? This was Deirdre, whom I haven't mentioned. She was the only one of us cute enough to work the counter. So she was rarely in the kitchen, except now because she'd heard something great was about to happen. "Glen's telling a joke," Dwayne said. "Okay, Glen, tell it again." There was a ring around me now. I was faced with expressions of serious intent. A group of refugees around a hand-crank radio during wartime. Dwayne was utterly sincere, hand on his chin, waiting for the joke so he could get it this time. "I can't," he said. There were wails, there were cries. I had to tell the joke. "Come on!" I was red and I was shamed, and I turned toward a phantom order as if it had to be made immediately. "Okay," Dwayne said, "I'll tell it. How do you make a woman come?" "How?" someone asked. "Who cares?" A spurt of laughter. Deirdre, who had been drinking a root beer, coughed and hacked, and as she recovered, she howled, "Who cares? Ha, that's so funny. What a guy joke." As I gazed from the sidelines, Dwayne told the joke over and over all night, each time getting fresh laughter. So there, take a picture of that guy. The one standing behind the counter with his little paper hat on, the one who lacked courage, the one fuzzy around the edges, the one who wasn't quite himself yet, nor prepared to defend who he actually was. That was the person I no longer wanted to be.